Hi guys, it's Laura from How to Get Your Shit Together, and in this video I am talking about setting up a basic budget, because I'm not really about the bells and whistles, while still being accurate and effective. You definitely do not need a degree in accounting to take control of your finances. If you've got a pen and paper, you're pretty much all set. I'll also be sharing how to go about it if your income is irregular like mine, what to do if your expenses vary in amount from month to month, as well as a tip that I have for dealing with those big annual expenses so that they don't just creep up on you. Let's go. I will preface this by saying, 1, I am not a financial expert, she says while wearing a Bugs Bunny jumper. And 2, my husband and I are thankfully not struggling financially. Having said that, we're not exactly minted either, and we both have an occasional tendency to burn through money like it's going out of fashion. So I hope everyone can benefit from what works for me. Right, let's get to it. The first thing to do if you want your budget to be in any way accurate is to track your spending for at least a month. The benefits of tracking before making your budget are twofold. 1, you get a very clear vision of how much you are spending. That way your budget can reflect your actual circumstances and not some rose-tinted view that refuses to accept just how much you're spending on Starbucks every week or stationery. 2, you can clearly see the areas that are draining your resources and where you could make cutbacks if necessary. I think we often have a tendency to underestimate how much we're spending, particularly since the advent of credit cards, and that's why so many budgets fail. They're just not realistic. So it's important to get a true picture of how much money you are parting with on a regular basis. There's no point budgeting 100 quid for groceries if you're actually spending 2. Now is not the time to be making massive cuts. You're simply finding out where your money is going first. During the tracking month, every time you spend money, make a note of it, either in a notebook, a spreadsheet, or an app. Just be sure that it's something that you will definitely keep updated. Apps are great because most people tend to carry their phones with them everywhere they go. Even just a simple note-taking app will do. I know a lot of people use the You Need a Budget app. If you use an app that you love, drop it in the comments below so that we can all check it out. Something that worked for me was that instead of typing in every single thing I spent every single time I spent it, I would just snap a quick picture of the receipt, and then at the end of the day I would sit down and put everything in together all at once. At the end of the month, break your spending down into categories. So groceries, mortgage, utilities, clothing, entertainment, etc. And then tot up your figures to give you an idea of how much you spend in a particular category in a month. Then write up your actual budget. So I do this in a very basic spreadsheet. I used to have a printable that I designed for my planner where I would write it all out. You can do it however you see fit, though I do think there's a lot to be said for writing things out by hand, at least in the beginning. Somehow it just makes things a little more real. The first thing to do is to list all of your income. Now I include money that I have in my current account and any cash that I have on hand. You want to ignore everything that cannot be used for kind of everyday regular expenses, so leave out things like your savings account, anything like that. If your income is irregular like mine is, tot up your earnings for the previous 6 months and then divide by 6 to get an average monthly income, and then use that figure. Or if you're finding that your finances are particularly tight, go back over the previous 6 months and find the lowest income amount and then use that as your figure. Add everything up there so that you know how much you have to play around with for the next month. Next, add in all of your expenses categories based on the amounts that you are spending while tracking. Now obviously some of your expenses are going to vary from month to month. That is why tracking is so important. It gives you a more accurate reflection of your spending habits. But start with the things that are necessary and are the same amount every month, so things like mortgage, car payments, etc. Followed by the necessities that may fluctuate, so groceries and things like that. And work your way down to the expenses that are a bit more frivolous, you know, things that you could cut out if necessary. Basically it is 1, things that can't be cut, 2, things that could be cut back on, and 3, things that could be cut out completely if you needed to. It may mean, for example, that you have 2 separate categories, one for groceries and one for eating out, even though technically they both fall in the food category. Now add up all of those expenses. You may be horrified by the total figure. That is normal. take your total income figure, subtract your total expenses, and see how much you're left with at the end of the month, or how much you're overspending. So what do you do with that figure? Well, if you're in the black and you have plenty of wiggle room, relax. What I do is make an extra payment towards my mortgage, so you could do that too, and or put some money into a savings account or a rainy day fund, whatever. If you're in debt, I would say put as much money as you can towards getting out of it as quickly as possible. But getting out of debt is a whole other topic. I will link Dave Ramsey's website below. He's an expert when it comes to stuff like that. If, however, you are overspending, it's time to start cutting. If you followed my instructions for listing your expenses, then all of your frivolous ones will be at the bottom. So start there and work your way up until you are at least breaking even. Be honest with yourself. If you are in debt, you probably do not need to be buying new clothes every month. Again, Dave Ramsey's website is a great resource for stuff like that. And I have a video on how to make big savings, so check that out too. If you want me to make a video on how you can make small savings on a regular basis, then drop me a comment below and let me know. I have loads of tips there too. But one of the best ways to curtail your spending is to pay for everything in cash. Plastic is too easy. It doesn't really feel like spending, so it's too easy to overspend. But if you are handing over cold hard cash every time, you will start to think twice. Suddenly those shoes don't look nearly as enticing when you see how little you will have left over after you've paid for them. Now, if you know that you are in the red and that things are getting a bit out of hand, it can be tempting not to write up a budget at all, usually because you're afraid of seeing the figure in black and white. But that is when it is even more important to do it. The old head in the sand approach isn't going to work here. You need to have an accurate assessment of the current situation so that you can take control and tackle it once and for all. When you can see everything clearly laid out in front of you, it is easy to spot the holes that need plugging. For some people, they will realize that the situation wasn't as bad as they thought initially, in which case, hooray! For other people, they will realize that the situation is actually worse, in which case it will be the kick up the arse they need to get their shit together. Never think that not writing it down means that it's not really a problem. If you don't say it out loud, it's still real. Find out where you are, where you want to be, and then get moving. Debt doesn't go away because you don't think about it. It is easier to find solutions if you can clearly see the problems. And finally, how to deal with big annual expenses. What I do is list them all out by month. So I know that in November I have 2 birthdays, in December I'll have Christmas, I have another birthday, my house insurance is due for renewal. I keep this list where I can see it when I'm doing up my budget so that I can slot each one in as necessary. It means that I never get to the end of a month and then think, shit, still have to pay the car tax. I can see all upcoming expenses, big and small. If this is something that you struggle with, consider opening a separate account where you can put money in just to cover those big expenses. Give yourself a best guess figure for each one, or look at how much you spent on them previously to give you a better idea. Top them up and then divide by 12 so that you know how much you need to be putting into that account every month to make sure that all of those expenses are funded. Shout outs to Patty for that particular tip. And there you have it, an accurate, effective budget that will help you take control of your finances and to see once and for all where all your money is going. And that is a wrap. Thumbs up if this video helped you, particularly if you're finding yourself struggling with your finances. I know it can be so tempting to come up with all sorts of fancy, complicated solutions, but often simplest is best. Find your total income, subtract your total expenses, and then if necessary, start making cuts from the bottom up. Remember to check out my last video on how to make big savings and to comment below and let me know what you use or what you are going to use for your budgeting. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because I upload new videos every Thursday to help you live a simpler, happier life. Now all I have to do is to convince myself that stationery is not a necessary expense. Until next time, gur míle maith agaibh agus feici mé sibse go luath. Slán!